Hi, my name's Bob Greenyer and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. So welcome to How Big Are One's Balls? I've got a very special thing for you today, and I speculated in a recent presentation that the top of the Caduceus here, as I saw it, where we have this kind of shepherd's crook type thing that tells us around the center, which I'm calling the Christ center, there is some sort of material here which we know to be carbon rich. I said that this was the radius in my guesstimate of this ball down here. Now, I hadn't done any actual testing of that, but I have done since. And so essentially what I'm saying is that something was captured in here and went up into our tornado and into our phase singularity here, and that when the whole thing blew up and failed with the fractal toroidal moment collapsing, that the ball then detached from its caduceus and came out here and sort of went down here and had this little spiral going, or little transitory sort of meandering path here, like a slalom, and it ejected this material from what would have been the head of the caduceus here, and it ended up settling over here. And so the first thing first is to test whether the ball would actually fit in here, and I did that, and so there it is. And therefore, I then said, well, if this is the central circle in our sacred geometry structure, let's see what would happen if we align things to that. And so I plonked on the sacred geometry here, and it all lines up extremely nicely. So most of the affected area is within the magnetohydrodynamic structure. The bottom of that caduceus here is lined up with this bit. There is a little bit of a bleed out of the mean square radius. Now, I've debated at length as to whether the mean square radius should be at this point or at this point. I think it's both, actually, and I think something is effectively your kind of double layer is between here and here, maybe even a little bit further out. But in any case, I believe that there is some bleed out going on here in this overall kind of weak point that is left. But anyway, now, why do I call this Caduceus? Because I really do believe that it is the Caduceus. So here is the Caduceus from 4,120 years ago, apparently. And it's the symbol of the god Ningajida. And it's funny that Yin is called Gajda. Not far off, one might say. But anyway, we will put on the Caduceus here, and you can see that the central line goes up. Now, of course, it's off to one side. It always is off to one side. There is this, because of the way the vortical nature works, it tends to be set off to one side, as you can see the skirt over here. But what's interesting is the Caduceus is variably drawn with, if you're looking down this tube going into the monopole, it's either done left or right, but this is right. This is, I think, one, if not the oldest archaeological artifact showing the Caduceus. And if we look at our actual structure here, it is a right Caduceus vortex coming into here. So I think the older you go back, the more accurate these structures are. And you can see that the head of the snakes almost exactly line up with the halfway mark through the sphere. And that again is not a surprise. And that the snakes come up to the same place if I take out the N-Tor ball here. So if I put on the Caduceus, you can see it comes up to where it cups here. Okay, so I think they someone knew the game, understood the technology well, and I think that's well represented here. Okay, so the question is, does this ball logic follow for subtors? Okay, so as we know, our subtor is effectively inside this white circle here. And so if we put on our sacred geometry n-1, and I've placed it on the golden ratio line here. So there we go, we have our subtor in there. It's oriented the wrong way round, it's facing us rather than orthogonal to us. But for the purposes of our argument, when we're looking at a spherical object in the center, that wouldn't matter. So then what I did is I took this structure here and saw if it lined up with this. Now, why is that important? Well, I'm going to come on to that in a second. But given that we've just found this structure here, what else have we seen in our various data sets that could point to a compatible or supporting structure? Well, if we look at our VCS 5RT, of course, our major active area is within the apple here, within the apple and the apple stalk down here. So this is our apple here and our apple stalk. And there is this central area where we've just observed the sphere. And that got me thinking with other, sorry, this is not VCS 5RT, this is DHX2 from Binger and Huang et al. If this is where the magnetic core of the pseudo-magnetic monopole or topological monopole is, then it should be there also in the work of Binger and Huang. And so on reviewing this particular image, and if you recall, we showed that these, in my view, are the subtors of a larger structure. And you can see how the geometry would line up there. And we also saw up here how there was one that was gone away, but it left the pit in the ground where it had impacted it. If we assume that this is a subtor as well, then actually this little thing isn't from inside here, and you can't see it going anywhere, but you see a section cut out of this one and almost a section cut out of this one, although it's tearing away. And I think that this structure here actually was like a little pinion wheel between these two structures. And we found, well, I think this would be iron rich, or at least copper rich, but I think it's likely to be iron rich. This is copper oxide, and so I think this is iron rich, and it hasn't quite formed a sphere. Maybe it lost its spherical shape because of the way this broke up, or the way it's forming, or the dynamics involved. So confirming that, or let's take this one at this scale and adjust it over so that the scale of this rather here, the n-1 Tor structure, is the same as on our Henk-Urian Vega Valley sample. And what do we see? Well, this is what we see. If we put the Huang sample over there, if you look at, effectively, if I take out this background here, you can see that the subtor is within this structure and the other one is broken off and gone to the side. But you can see that this potentially iron or magnetic core of this structure is largely within this circle. And I think it's broken out because the confinement didn't either run for long enough or it failed to form a sphere in this particular case. Though we do know that in the VCS 5RT there were iron-rich crenellated spheres synthesized, and so certainly the cavitation system can do that in the case of Binger and Huang. So that is Huang's system confirmed, same geometrical ratios going on. And this kind of points to an exciting, a really exciting piece of hard facts supporting that this is the structure that does LENR, and it is the structure of ball lightning, and it is what does ultrasound type reactions. So why do I say that? Well, we know that the synthesized elements come out of this material. We know this from Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto. We know it from our own work in many different respects, and other parties like S.V. Adamenko saw similar spherical, hollow spherical things, and he claimed in that structure is where the nuclear reactions occurred, and this was also the claim in the 1992 patent of Mikhail Solin. Okay, so if this is the core, then do we see this anywhere else? Well, possibly. So if we go here, this is a structure that was produced in an ultra experiment that ran for 900 seconds by my fellow MFMP director Alan Goldwater in his Magic Sound Lab. I asked him to run a test and run a magnet around like David Butley had done and see if the magnetic particles that he captured were iron-rich crenellated spheres, if he did capture any magnetic particles. And sure enough, on his first attempt, this is what he observed several times, many actual examples. But this is one, this is the smoothest one that he had. And so using the scale here of 10 microns and the distance across here, I thought, does that fit the data of an ultrasound impression mark in an ultra experiment? Well, I have the same 43 kilohertz nominal ultrasonic cleaning tank, and in my case, I showed that there's a variability in the ultrasound resonant frequency and harmonics depending on the amount of water. So there may be some variability, but I thought I'd just suck it and see. And so what I did was I looked at the ultra experiment here, and in this case it has a very, very important feature here. I've discussed this in the past with respect to the magnetohydrodynamic structure on the tungsten of I brought a tungsten thoriated rod to expose Dr. Roy Shinamaza gas on, and we saw a helical beam coming out of this vector. What do I mean by that? Well, if I turn on the sacred geometry here, the helical beam comes out between the Vesica Pisces and the golden ratio line, and it's very, very precise where that comes out. And I will study and share this data at a separate time, but this is blended in. The synthesized elements are blended into the aluminium foil, and it is centered on that part of the vortex, but coming out in this line. I imagine there's possibly one going out in the opposite vector potentially there, but definitely this is multiple times we have seen this, and you're going to see it again in a minute. But my question is this, and we can see this is what, 42 microns across, is this the same thing going on as we are seeing here in the Henk-Urien experiment and in the Bin-Juan experiment? Well, it would turn out that possibly it is. So what I did is I put on the ball here, and I had a scale on here, which is from down the bottom here. You can see 150 microns. So if I put that in there, that is 150 microns. So from here is 50, and I scaled up my other ball here to a 50 micron scale here. Actually, it's 60 microns, it's 50 microns up to about here. And I aligned the two, and here we go. Boom! It is the same. Essentially, if I take out the sacred geometry, it's pretty much bang on, given the fact that my experiment only ran for 90 seconds and his ran for 900 seconds, and his was just nominally the same, and we know there is some frequency variation. The frequency will determine the yin-yang structure here. It is literally incredibly amazing to me that this would be the case, that this structure is exactly following this paradigm that the size of the iron-rich crenellated sphere is in the Maltese cross, the Christ center of the sacred geometry, the magnetohydrodynamic fractal toroidal moment geometry. Okay, so if we are saying that that is fractal, then we should expect that the sub-tor geometry here, which is down here, and as I said, the sub-tor is starting within this white circle, and whilst I've got this pointing towards me, it would actually be rotated 90 degrees, and I've got it on the golden ratio line. So we should imagine that our sub-tor iron-rich crenellated spheres would literally be this scale. And what do we have over here? What do we on this coherent matter traveling wave beam, which we know seems to be headed by its own ball structure? We saw this in our work and in the work of Takaaki Matsumoto from 1999. And that's what I'm referring to when I refer to this ejection point. It's this ejection point. We literally saw the helical beam cutting through the tungsten on the Amasa gas treated tungsten. And here we have a similar thing ejecting between the Vesica Pisces and the golden ratio line. We have our ball with a trail of material. Could we potentially think that this material is being ejected from inside this ball? I don't know. But let's see if that fits up. Oh, and there's another ball down here that looks about the same size. It's almost being carried by the larger ball, but here it is. And we did see something similar to this in another scenario, although it's not quite the same. You can see here this is the natural ball lightning from Hestalen, but this is from the Henkurian Vega Valley in this case, from the central channels. And you can see it has a smaller ball down here with a little plume of material coming out of it. But let's go back to the main event here. This has a little plume coming out of this one, and this one has a much larger plume coming out of this one. Was this attracted to this gravitationally as this one launched itself from the head of the Caduceus over here and came around? I'm going to take off the Tor ball, moved from here to there. As it came round, did it carry this one with it? I don't know. But this one and this one, they look about the same size. Are they the same size as this? Are you ready? Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, boom! Yes, they are. They are the same as the substructure sacred geometry core, the Christ center of the substructure. So let's look at that. There's some material still around this, and there's some bloom because it's charging. Maybe this is silicon, this particular ball, not fully iron, but that is, in my view, a thing. We possibly have a way to determine the size of the overall structures from the size of the balls found. Here we go. Boom! It's absolutely precise. This system refuses to disappoint. Now, you will probably say, what's this little ball over here? Well, actually, I don't know. It doesn't look like it's part of the story, but it may be. And there are other balls in here. Could it be that, as we've already identified and seen right from the beginning in Suhas Ralkar's lab, smaller structures can be sucked in via the Caduceus, via this depressurization zone that then pulls it in like a tractor beam into the monopole. And as it gets pulled in, does it get basically synchronized and crushed and miniaturized like we saw on the VCS5RT iron-rich crenellated sphere that appeared to have tori in there with spheres in the center? Is that where that's gone? And as this spewed itself over here, maybe this sphere and this sphere had come out of the center I don't know. But what I can do and say with reasonable certainty that this structure here is the size of the Christ Center, the Maltese cross. Is this the thunderstone that the Nordics would refer to that came from bolts of lightning and they used to make their weapons from? Is that what that is? And if that is if that scale in the center of the sacred geometry is also the same as in the n-1 Tor sacred geometry here, accurate in these two cases, and these are effectively the core of those two sacred geometries. If I take out this background, you can see them all together. So what I've got here is I've lined that sacred geometry up on the inside where you would have the n-1 Tor, okay? And that point there is this point here and is this point scale here. My friends, I think we have a science. I think we have a technology that gives extremely precise outputs. So, yes, I believe that this is the Caduceus, and someone knew what they were talking about. It's not a coincidence, in my opinion, that the Caduceus there lines up precisely with the crook, the kind of like arc of the top of this structure where the ball sits. So if I take out the Caduceus, what am I referring to? I'm talking about this, the sort of cup that is holding it and feeding it, yes? So turn on the ball and turn on the Caduceus, okay? So there will be Caduceus involved with these, and they are the Sub-torus destruction beams, and they come out, and I will talk about how they can do some more geometric alignment of structures, and that will help us to understand these structures going on here in the Vega Valley. Now, given the fact that we know how big the spheres were compared to the overall structures in both the Ultra experiment and the experiment of Henkurian, you can imagine that these ones, which we determined here from the side walls, where we've got three pairs here, about 618 micrometers, so about 206 micrometers each. And down here we can see that the red-green polarization is around about 101 each. It makes sense that these structures rotating one way and or influencing the matter so that it polarizes light one way and the other. That probably is the same thing that's going on that yields the central cores here. So this would be polarizing it one way, and this would be polarizing it the other way. Polarizing it one way, and it would be these kind of structures here that are doing the polarization. And so you can imagine anywhere that these go, they will affect the material they interact with. But given that these on this side are, let's say, 202, and from this determination they are about 206, one could argue that you would be able to determine the scale of the overall structure, like in here, and like in here, and like in here. And that would give you the size of the iron-rich crenellated sphere that it would produce. This is my absolute honor to present this to you. This really is becoming a real science. It's predictable, it delivers, and it works in anywhere where there is vibration, essentially, and charge separation, and hydrodynamics. So if you are working in a system and you change something that changes its resonant property, be that you're changing the temperature, or you're changing, like, let's say you had a trombone. It's only going to play like a trombone when it's got the pipes the right length. If you slap in a bigger pipe, it's not going to work. It's not going to work and sing the same way. If you play a guitar and you pluck the strings, but then you like hold on to the string, it's not going to work in the same way. So resonance is absolutely critical here in sound for ion acoustic waves, and sound with, you might like to say, polar acoustic waves in here, where you've got like polar molecules in the water, but I've argued that they actually become easy water around these structures. But here we have two systems. This is both based on the same ultrasound equipment, but one was an experiment conducted by me over 90 seconds, and that gave us this structure here. And I determined the sacred geometry to be sitting here a long time ago. I haven't modified it, with this key ejection of a coherent matter wave when a ball that would have been produced in here gets thrown out. Okay, so the ball would have been the same kind of scale as the sub-torus structure we just looked at on the Henk-Uren experiment. So that would have come out of here, and when we overlay the big ball that was produced in 900 seconds by Alan Goldwater on his own, that, in my view, is absolutely bang on to within a fag paper of the scale that it needs to be to fit within the sacred geometry's Christ center. Okay, so Christ center, ball in the center there, and the n-1 balls are here. Two of that scale observed here, and one can imagine that there will be many more substructures in there. Now the question is this just the one that was in there, but maybe the thing tries to survive and it synthesizes another ball but doesn't quite get there? Those kind of things may be going on, but I believe that in these structures you will find always one large ball, which may have a lot of little balls trapped inside it, and then you will find a minimum of two balls where they have the minimum sub-torus structure of 2. But of course we know we can have more sub-torus structures. So let's say there was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know. Maybe this little ball came out when it initially crashed down, and it resynthesized another ball. And since we know these things can form fantastically quickly, a lot of that may be going on. So you might have a system that is able to survive an impact and reconstitute and restabilize itself and synthesize more balls. But I would suggest to you that this ball here that is coming out at this point, if I can get rid of that one, this one that's coming out at this point here is in fact coming from the core of this, and this is its tail, in the same way that is coming out of the Ultra experiment here, but we don't actually see the ball. So thank you very much for your time, and I will see you in the next video.